Imagine stepping onto a world that was never meant to know your footsteps. A sky without mercy, a ground that burns, crushes, freezes, or poisons in silence. In the vast theater of the cosmos, every planet writes its own version of death, swift, strange, and terrifyingly beautiful. Imagine you have an impossible ticket, a journey with no right to make a mistake. You open the hatch of your ship not onto friendly Earth, where air slips into your lungs on its own, where water flows in rivers instead of boiling in the shadows, where the sky does not try to kill you every second, but onto another planet. A world where nature itself seems designed not for life, but for the execution of everything living. And then death stops being something abstract. It becomes wind, pressure, poison, cold, fire, the silent physics of the universe, which does not care in the slightest whether you exist or not. Let us begin with Mercury, a small scorched sphere of rock hanging so close to the sun that space itself seems heated white hot. On its day side, the temperature rises to about 430 degrees Celsius. This is the heat of a furnace, the heat of molten metal, the kind of heat where lead no longer seems solid or reliable. If you found yourself there without protection, your death would be immediate and horrifying. There is no air. The sky is black even in the middle of a blinding day. Sunlight strikes without the filter of an atmosphere, harsh as a spotlight slammed into your face, except that this spotlight carries radiation from which there is no escape. But the most terrifying thing about Mercury is the contrast. Step onto the night side, and the temperature collapses to about minus 180 degrees Celsius. One and the same world knows how to kill with flame and with icy emptiness. Here, death is either incineration or a slow freezing until you become as fragile as glass. And then there is Venus, perhaps the most beautiful and the most monstrous planet in the solar system. In Earth's sky, it shines like the morning star, like a tender beacon at dawn. But that is a deception. Beneath its pale clouds lies a true hell. Venus's atmosphere is made almost entirely of carbon dioxide, and the pressure at the surface is like having the weight of an ocean about 1 kilometer deep pressing down on you. The temperature there remains around 465 degrees Celsius, constantly, day and night, at the equator and near the poles. This is not simply a hot place, it is a furnace on a planetary scale. If you were on Venus, you would die in several ways at once. First, you would be crushed by monstrous pressure. Then, you would be burned by heat that never allows metal to cool. And if you were descending through the upper layers of the atmosphere, you would be greeted by clouds of sulfuric acid, not a romantic mist, but chemical death hanging in the sky. Venus is a reminder that beauty in the universe often wears a mask. Mars long seemed to humanity almost familiar. Red dust, polar caps, changing seasons. But if you dream of dying beautifully on Mars like a hero from a film, reality would be much colder and far more humiliating. Its atmosphere is so thin that your lungs would almost immediately stop doing their job. The pressure is too low for the blood and fluids in your body to behave normally. Water in exposed tissues would begin to boil, not from heat, but from the lack of pressure. Temperatures on Mars often fall to minus 60 degrees Celsius and lower. Dust storms can swallow the entire planet, turning the world into a rust-red abyss. You would not suffocate instantly the way it happens in movies. For a few agonizing seconds, consciousness would cling to life while the body realized that this world had left you no air, no warmth, and no chance. But the true cruelty of space reveals itself on the giants. Jupiter, king of the planets, enormous, striped, majestic. You cannot stand on it because it has no solid surface in any familiar sense. If you began descending into its atmosphere, first you would see clouds of ammonia and crystals. Then you would find yourself inside storms of monstrous force. The winds there race faster than many hurricanes on Earth, and the famous Great Red Spot is a storm that has lasted not for days or months, but for centuries. Death on Jupiter would be a journey downward into a gigantic grinder of pressure. The deeper you go, the more terrible the compression becomes. Gas turns into a dense, almost liquid abyss. The temperature rises. The pressure becomes so insane that hydrogen changes its state and becomes metallic. You would not simply be crushed. You would be erased as a structure, as a form, as the very idea of a living being. Saturn seems calmer, almost noble. Its rings make it look like an ornament left in the darkness of space by some divine hand. But death there would be no less merciless. Saturn is also a gas giant, also without any solid support beneath your feet. Its winds are even faster than on many other worlds. If you were falling through its atmosphere, you would spend a long time meeting nothing but thickening gas, the cold of the upper layers, and then the growing heat of the depths. It would be a drawn-out sentence, not a blow, not an explosion, but a slow descent into a place where the mass of the planet itself would eventually destroy you. And even the rings, which from afar seem solid, are in fact made of countless fragments of ice and stone. Try passing through them at high speed, and they would become cosmic buckshot. Uranus is a strange planet, tilted over on its side, as if it once received such a colossal blow that it never managed to straighten itself again. A piercing cold reigns there. Temperatures in the upper layers of the atmosphere fall below -200 degrees Celsius. This is no longer merely the cold of a winter night. This is a kind of cold in which all our familiar ideas about life become a joke. If you fell into it, you would lose your heat very quickly, and then your consciousness. But even here, death would not come through frost alone. The atmosphere is made of hydrogen, helium, and methane, with no oxygen, no chance to draw breath, nothing remotely familiar. The sky of Uranus would feel eerily calm, pale, ghostly, and in that silence, you would vanish almost without a trace. Neptune lies even farther away, darker, seemingly colder, and yet at the same time, it is one of the windiest worlds in the solar system. There, winds blow at speeds that can exceed 2,000 kilometers per hour. That is faster than the bullet speed of some older weapons, faster than the fiercest storms on Earth, faster than common sense itself. If you found yourself in Neptune's atmosphere, you would face a combination of freezing cold, a total absence of breathable air, and crushing streams of gas capable of tearing apart any structure, any shield, any illusion of durability. Neptune is not simply a cold planet. It is cold fury. And yet the strangest deaths await not only on planets, but in the very rules of the universe. On icy worlds beyond familiar warmth, you die not in fire, but in silence. On burning ones, not in screams, but in a blinding flash. On the gas giants, you do not fall to the ground, because there is no ground. On rocky planets, you perish from things that on Earth we barely notice. Pressure, the composition of the air, radiation, the finest balance that here, on our home world, is maintained almost miraculously. And that is what astonishes the most. Earth is not merely convenient for life. It is unbelievably, almost implausibly merciful. We live on the surface of an ocean of air that does not suffocate us and does not melt us, beneath a sky that blocks part of the lethal radiation of the sun. On a planet where water can remain liquid, where temperature usually does not turn metal into brittle ice and does not bake stone in a furnace. We have grown so accustomed to this mercy of the world that we no longer notice how unique it truly is. If you look at the other planets long enough, you begin to understand the universe is not cruel. It is simply honest. It never promised that it would be comfortable. It never promised that life was the rule. Quite the opposite. Life may well be the rarest exception among endless deserts, frozen abysses, and burning cauldrons. And that is why every walk through a forest on Earth, every breath on a cold morning, every rainstorm tapping against the window is already a small miracle, born on a planet that somehow, against all odds, became our home. When we ask what death would be like on every planet, we are really asking something else. Why we are alive here. Why this particular world turned out to be capable of holding the fragile spark of consciousness amid the grand and indifferent machinery of the cosmos. And perhaps the greatest discovery of such a journey lies not in the horror of alien worlds, but in a renewed love for our own. Thank you for taking this dark and beautiful journey with me. If you enjoyed this video, support the channel with a like. Write in the comments which planet would frighten you the most to find yourself on, and share this episode with those who also love looking into the abyss of space and seeing in it not only fear, but also wonder. If you would like to support the channel and future episodes, it would be a huge help. Stay with us, and until next time.